It's the morning drive. This is Mirror Business FM. Good morning. Recent geopolitical tensions have affected critical digital infrastructure. Reports show cloud operations in Bahrain were disrupted. Major platforms like AWS, Amazon Web Services were impacted recently. So for businesses across the region, it is a wake-up call of sorts. Resilience is no longer only about cybersecurity, it's about survival. Disaster recovery kind of moved from IT support to the C-suite, and Chief Information Security Officers, or CISOs, are increasingly being asked to take ownership of business continuity. That's the topic that we want to get into this morning in this segment. Naji Salameh is the CEO of IT Max Global, which is a company that works on digital transformation, innovation, cybersecurity, and more, and is with me. It's good to meet you.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here. I wanted to start, actually, before we jump into the main topic, about a little bit about your business, because you're international. You work in the UAE, you work in Lebanon, Pakistan, South Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, so bases in Kinshasa and Brazzaville as well. Just tell me how the relationship with Africa, how did that come about?
Well, actually, from the get-go, from our launch in 2010, we decided that we want to be a regional company, and we were working with customers and enterprises across the Middle East and Africa. Now, to support customers across the region, we had, of course, set up several offices, the one that you mentioned, and several others as well. And from these offices, we're catering to all of the various enterprises across the region.
Okay. Naji, we've spent years worrying about hackers in basements, or the classic image of the spotty teenager, slightly disgruntled in the bedroom, hacking away at night. But that's really changed. The threat to data centers now, to critical IT infrastructure, has moved from the virtual really to the physical. I guess. Moving to the cloud meant that data was safe, or at least that's what we thought. But how is the definition of risk, how has that changed in 2026?
Yeah, very good question. So it has changed quite a lot. The risk was always probably known to some of the C club, but probably not taken seriously. Now this is a wake-up call, as you mentioned it. This has pushed the enterprises to revisit their disaster recovery strategy, their business continuity strategy, to relook at every single aspect of it to make sure that they are really built in a resilient way and they're able to absorb any kind of downtime.
Is that what your clients are talking to you now about? Is that the message that you're receiving at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, many customers wants to make sure that they are protected, that they have proper backup policy, proper DR strategies, proper, business continuity plans, all of that. So this is a main topic on the mind of many of our customers today.
How about the recent cloud infrastructure outages? I mentioned AWS in Bahrain, for example. Twice, I think, there were issues. How is that changing the way organizations think about risk? Because AWS is a huge part of cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, so AWS was hosting customers, like enterprises who want a virtual environment or some kind of container environment to host their data. And also it was hosting SaaS providers, global SaaS providers, across the globe, who are also offering enterprise services or services to the enterprise. So all of that, have impacted, customers throughout the region. And I have to say there were some premium vendors hosted into that, Amazon data centers. Having said that, now the customers are looking at that and saying, the business continuity strategy is not only about the solution hosted in my data center. How are my cloud services and how are my partner services? The partners are providing software as services. What kind of business continuity plan they have to make sure that any kind of downtime they have a backup plan for it to be able to recover from it.
The ability to shift data globally is it's a pretty technical feat. We've seen AWS and others help customers migrate workload to other regions, in real time. There's a unique challenge, I think, for Middle Eastern businesses who need to keep their data on home soil. And looking at the current landscape, do you think it's time to move beyond these kind of concentrated hubs towards maybe a more decentralized sort of regional grid? Is that something that we should be considering?
Well, the answer to that is, is by the regulation. The regulation, not only in the GCC, but also across the globe, they mandate that certain data have to reside in country. So in no situation, the country needs to reside in country, and rightfully so. You have a lot of information that should not really cascade outside the border of the country where the information is residing. Having said that, this doesn't really stop from building a proper business continuity plan, right? So you can always have, a proper business continuity plan in country where you have your primary data, you have your DR data, you have also another backup sitting somewhere, in a third location that will help you to be, as ready as possible to absorb any kind of downtime, whether that's resultant from a cybersecurity attack or from a total outage of a data center.
You're a person that's advocated for a while for digital transformation. It's a major part of your business. And we're now seeing chief information security officers being kind of pulled into board meetings to talk about stuff that maybe they didn't used to talk about, shipping routes or site security or regional power grids, for example. Mm-hmm. So kind of being tasked with owning disaster recovery, particularly at the moment, not just kind of incident response. Do you have CISOs or Chief Information Security Officers kind of become Chief Resilience Officers when you consider where we are now in the current climate, at least?
Yeah, so for the last several years, the CISO's role has evolved and has expanded, right? It has expanded across because of the digital transformation, as you mentioned, right?
Sure.
A lot of the digital services are ongoing that have kind of moved the CISO role from just a person that's handling the security or just a department that's handling the security all the way to a business leader within the organization. So the CISO is a person as part of the C club, making business decisions as well, right? And has the power to go across different departments, right, in order to ensure that the business continuity and the resiliency is built as a core foundation of the organization, not really built as an add-on to the organization. So yes, business leaders or CISOs are into this role. And of course, whenever you have the whole AI transformation, you have more AI threats ongoing right now. You need somebody that will be looking at the different, at your AI rollout, for instance. And a lot of times the AI rollout is being handled by the CISO in some organization to make sure that the protection of the data is there. And then, for instance, you look at the DevOps, for instance, within the companies, the CISO plays a good role into making sure that the development is indeed secure from the get-go in the code, as opposed to come in as a plugin on the top later on down the road.
It's an increasingly important role, isn't it? Not just resilience officers, almost bridging officers in some ways as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's the difference between incident response and real business resilience? Could you define the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So incident response is a response to an incident, like, for instance, a cyber threat or cyber penetration. So while resilience is looking at the infrastructure to make sure that the business is ready to absorb any kind of downtime, regardless of the phase of the downtime. If it's a total data center outage, if it's an internet outage, if it's a SIP trunk outage, or whatever kind of outage we're talking about.
In the past, disaster recovery was an insurance policy you hoped you'd never have to use.
Yeah.
Right? If the headline earlier this week was 700,000 cyber attacks a day. It's a very dramatic headline, but it has drastically increased because of where we are now in this current kind of economic climate, the conflict climate that we're in. Physical infrastructure obviously has been under threat and is under threat as well. Is disaster recovery now kind of a daily operation requirement rather than just in case? It's a plan for just in case.
Yeah, so actually, disaster recovery should be daily requirement even under normal circumstances.
Right.
You have to ensure that you have a proper way of backing up the data, right? If you're not monitoring the backup of the data on a regular basis, you're not going to have, a backup, whether we're talking about you're backing up to another virtual environment or you're backing up to another disk, you're not going to have a reliable backup that you're going to be able to recover. So this is, disaster recovery and resiliency should be part of the core foundation. And if you don't build that in the way you operate, it's not going to be there to support you whenever you need it to support you.
Realistically, how do companies prepare for outages in cloud services or data center services? What do you advise?
Well, I would say the preparedness of the companies varies across different vertical, varies across different countries. We have, for instance, the banking sector across the GCC. I would say it's very ready because the regulator mandates all of the R requirements, and that's an excellent thing. And of course, it supervises that as well, every once in a while. So you have some verticals that are ready, while you have other verticals that their readiness is, it depends, right? Depends on the organization. Some have created a DR environment where they can, operate from another geographical center. Some are backing up the data, but I would say overall, many organizations are still, not really prepared for this, mainly due of the governance and the testing that is lacking. So if you have a DR strategy where you're not really testing it, where you're not really governing it, it's not going to give you the result that you need whenever you need that insurance policy.
It's kind of the answer I feared, to be honest with you. It's kind of the answer I expected, because it always seems as though it's a case of, well, it's not happened, so it won't happen, and there's a scramble to catch up when things do happen. What are the biggest gaps that you see in business continuity planning?
The testing, and the governance, and the testing is not a one-time thing, right? It's an ongoing thing. Like I mentioned before, first you have to look at the monitoring of the data. You have to monitor that the backup is happening, that the backup to the VM or the backup to the tape or whatever, it's really in place and it's ongoing on a regular basis. You have to do some recovery test every once in a while, where you take a virtual machine and you bring it back up, again, or you take a database and you recover that database. You have to look at different aspects, of this and test it on a going basis, all the way up to, to complete dry run of your infrastructure environment to make sure that you are really ready to use that insurance policy in case you need it.
It's a mindset, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a mindset of how you operate on a day-to-day basis. And it's a mindset that it needs to be across the whole organization, not necessarily only across the IT department, but also across the business leaders throughout the organization.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for you, I guess, it's second nature. It's just part of existing in your space. But how do you encourage that kind of thinking? Because this needs to be second nature. It's just something that happens, and almost as though you don't notice it. That's kind of the way it needs to be viewed, isn't it, in an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So it needs to be built as part of the day-to-day operation. It needs to have a top-down push. You need to have the right investment into it. Of course, you cannot oversize it. It will become very expensive. You don't want to undersize it as well. It will not give you the right push or a right result whenever you need it. So you need to look at it from a pragmatic perspective, to look at every mission-critical application, and build what we call the right recovery point objective, right RPO or right RTO. Basically, how much data you're able to lose and you can live with, and how fast you can recover, right? Those are two key criteria to look at it, and you don't want to establish aggressive RPO or TO for some of these applications because it becomes super expensive, to build it and to operate it on a day-to-day basis.
I love the acronyms. I'm getting to grips with the IT acronyms, the RTOs of the world. You got IT Max Global, your company. You work extensively on innovation, right? Are you seeing a surge in demand for sovereign clouds, infrastructure that's owned and operated within, countries within the UAE or within Saudi Arabia, for example, that can operate independently of the global hyperscalers, if necessary?
This is happening across the region. Many African countries have their own data center today, more than one in some situations. Yeah, depending on which country we're talking about. It's happening in Europe. It's happening all over, right? So have a sovereign cloud is important for the government. Vertical is important for some of the verticals as well, like banking, like healthcare in some situation. So yeah, we're seeing that happening, and it's happening all over the world.
How should organizations rethink their reliance on a single cloud provider or a single region?
So you need to look at your mission critical application that's going to impact your revenue, right? Or for instance, can be mission critical application because those cannot afford to go down. As an example, you might be able to live with some downtime, but not a lot of downtime. And for those, you need to build another geographical application in the geographical center with a expectation back to the business on what is the RPO and the RTO that you can deliver back in front in case of an outage. So yes, we're looking at multi-cloud we've been deploying multi-cloud for many customers across the region for a long time. And this is needed for a mission critical application. You don't want to do that for every single application because it becomes very expensive, right?
Sure.
So you want to build that for a right application that cannot afford to go down.
And that's critical in resilience terms as well, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. You were talking about CISOs or CISOs, Chief Information Security Officers, just now, and this just kind of pops into my head. How do you, as a Chief Information Security Officer, effectively communicate? What kind of language do you have to choose? What attitude do you need to have if you're talking to a board of directors who may not have the same, that level of awareness that you do? How do you communicate cyber security and resilience, cyber risks and resilience risks to boards, to CEOs who are consumed by so many other aspects of the business?
Yeah, so this is the tough part, right? Because every organization has a limitation on the budget, right? And where do we put the budget? Do we put it on projects that are revenue producing, or do we put it into a disaster recovery plan or a business continuity plan? So this decision needs to be done very carefully. I think the best way for a CISO to articulate the case is to look at it from a financial perspective. What is a downtime going to be costing the company from a business perspective? What is going to be the impact on the image of the company, on the branding of the company? What's going to be the impact on the customers, right? And how much we're going to be able to retain the customers in case an outage has happened. When you look at it from an ROI perspective, when you look at all these elements and you translate them into an ROI, which sometimes is not really straightforward, sometimes this might be debatable, right? From an ROI perspective, I think this is the most effective way a CISO can make their case to make sure at least they're building the right resiliency for a critical application that they have.
You mentioned AI just now very briefly. We're all talking about AI, of course, a great deal at the moment, but of late, much more about how AI can power attacks. How does predictive intelligence work? Say to move, a client's data before disruption happens. Can AI really sense, a digital storm is on the way? I'm asking, I think.
Yeah, of course you can automate, many different things when it comes to the recovery of the data, when it comes to, how you fall back into. Keep in mind that when things happen, when a disaster happen, one key element is the people that you have, right? How are you going to operate the business? It's not only about the technology. The technology is only one single part of it, right? Where is my technical people going to be, all right? The technical people, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is I need to take care of my family, right? That will be the first priority on anybody's mind, and rightfully so. So we need to, think about all these different scenarios whenever, we're planning a certain scenario and cater for that. So if automating as much things as possible, and there's a lot of things you can do in automation today, that makes it extremely appealing. Of course, you cannot automate everything. You always have that human intervention that needs to happen. But there's a lot of things that can be automated at this stage.
If you are hit with a real crisis, what priorities should you have as a chief information security officer? What are the first three things that you should be focusing on?
Okay, so I would say the first thing is to contain the threat, right? You have to contain the threat and stabilize the situation. So contain the threat means understanding of the threat, and in terms of security, you have to understand how the hacker went into the network, right? And really understand it to be able to stabilize the environment. The second thing is about recovery of the application. And of course, you have when you want to recover the application, you need to have priorities. What is priority one? What is priority two? What is priority three? And focus on it from that angle, because every single person across the entire organization is going to say, I want my application and I want it now. Sure. And everybody is going to be in a chaos at that point in time. And I would say the third step is communication. So as a CISO, you need to communicate back to the leadership of the organization. You need to communicate back to your employees as well, right? And it's easy under those situations for you to be under a lot of pressure, right? So you need to be able to set a plan around the communication. You know how you communicate back every hour or every 2 hours, depending on the situation, back to the leadership. This way, they can communicate to their end user client or to their other stakeholders across the organization.
Communication is key, clearly. What does a good disaster recovery plan look like? How do you test it as well? What does a good test look like?
So I would say test depends from one organization. A good test depends from one organization to the other. But if we want to talk in general, from an industry best standard perspective, probably I would say monitoring on a regular basis. It's easy to do that, to monitor on a regular basis and let flag abnormalities as things comes up. So this should be 7/24, right? And there are many different monitoring tools that are ongoing that can do excellent job into monitoring your platform. Whether you're talking on the application layer or you're talking on the data network layer or any kind of layers throughout your organization. The second thing is recovery of some things, right? You want to make sure that your people, your team, is able to recover, certain things. I would say that probably frequency on a monthly basis. You recover a virtual machine, you recover, a certain file, right? Across, and you do it once a month. And then you go on a quarterly basis, and this is when you recover, you do dry run to recover a whole application, right? Your ERP, for instance. If your ERP is very relevant, you do dry run to recover the whole ERP, and you see how well you're doing against your recovery time objective and recovery point objective. And another, key part of the test would be a complete testing, maybe once a year, maybe more. At the minimum, I would say once a year, to do complete testing, stimulate a disaster that has happened, and do complete testing across the organization, including the business owners as part of the test, right? This way, the whole organization get an exposure on what to do in case something like that happen. And of course, you always have to do dry run tests when you do major changes within your network. If you replace your data network, for instance, you need to come back and do complete run and not wait, for your yearly end-to-end testing for that to take place.
One of the things about now is we've seen some disruptions, not as much as far less than perhaps could have been, but there are lessons to be learned, aren't there? So, what kinds of lessons can regional businesses take from the disruptions to AWS in Bahrain, for example? What kinds of things should we be learning from that?
I would say there's a lot of lessons learned that happen from this situation anywhere it happens across the globe. In this situation, I would say not just rely on the cloud like this. You have to make sure that you look at the DR that you have. Yeah, because a lot of enterprises just say, okay, my data is in this specific data center or in this specific cloud. That means I'm safe. So what we encourage the customer is to look at exactly the DR, for the cloud. The other lesson is there's a difference between highly available and a DR. Highly available, that means, you can be within the same data center. You can have not a single point of failure. Everything is redundant. Your firewalls are redundant. Your switches are redundant. Your server farm is redundant. Anything that happens automatically, the other part of, or the mirror part of that hardware or the mirror part of that application takes over, right? So this is kind of highly available. So the lesson learned is don't depend on highly available for your mission critical application. Make sure that have a physical DR somewhere else. It can be in country or outside, depending on what your preference, depending on the regulation, to be able to operate and withstand any kind of attacks.
Final question for you. I just want to kind of look past the headlines and ask you, really just for your thoughts. Do you think the crisis that we're seeing in the region will maybe accelerate the journey here in this region towards becoming maybe one of the world's most resilient digital economies? Or do you think investment is perhaps shying away? How are you reading things?
Yeah, I would say, typically the main issue in the DR is not really the lack of technology, it's the lack of governance, the lack of testing, the lack of preparedness. So what incidents like that, whether it happens here or it happens in other areas, will help business to be able to build a more resilient network, because this is a part that they felt, that they know that they should really incorporate and take more seriously as part of their organization.
That's all the time we've got, unfortunately. Just a message for you from YouTube Live, which is one of the platforms that we're on at the moment. That's my boss, Naji. Proud to see you. There you go.
Okay, great.
That's, who is it? Josu.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jason.
That's the one. Naji Salameh is the CEO of IT Max Global. Appreciate you coming in. Thanks for talking.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you here. This is Mirror Business FM.